Mike from around the world. Mike,
Pastor Paul.
there you are. How you doing?
Okay, there you are. I got you. Bit of
Oh man,
a technical difficulty here.
yeah, this happens. It's called PBT. We won't put any blame on you, and it could be the NSA or one of those guys. I don't know.
Possibility.
How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm blessed, Pastor Paul, getting my voice back.
Yeah, good, good.
I
Uh,
lost it for a week.
was it? It was just some laryngitis, or what? What happened?
No, it was I think it was out in the cold too long. That's what I believe. I was right in the wind, and yelling at the same time, and so it kind of just
Yeah,
did its thing. One of those things, no big deal.
you're going to be okay. So we're glad
Oh
to
yeah.
hear that. That's good. All right, Mike. Well, look, there's a lot of people want to ask certain questions, and I'm going to ask you them. I ask people if you got questions for Mike, but the big question in everyone's mind is this headline: how Russia's brazen plan to put nukes in space could cripple America, causing a nationwide blackout, grounding military aircraft fleets, and disabling making systems, and just really creating a total chaos. Mike, I guess my first thought is I think they're already there, aren't they? I mean, hasn't Putin already accomplished this?
That's a can of worms. You want to open that one up?
Yeah,
That
we got
really
to.
is a can of
We need
worms.
to open it. It's the biggest. It's the biggest story today. So
Okay.
okay,
Okay. It's a can of
all
worms,
right.
and it requires a bit of
You got to dance.
education.
Okay, okay.
Bit of education.
All right.
Okay.
Inform us.
But so
Educate us.
just to say this, um, we got to go back. We got to go back. And in fact, let me see something here. We got to go back. I'm going to read something.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to read something. This is very important. This is an extremely important piece of a document. I'm going to read a piece. You guys can, everybody can look for the words and go back and find what this document is. I'm not going to mention it on air because if I do that, it may not be available for
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
So
Let's
here
not
it
do that.
is.
Okay.
Considerable interest in the Soviet space program is developing in the West. Western analysts catalog continuous and in-depth Soviet drive to improve its current military space capabilities to develop new ones as technologies breakthroughs are achieved. Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? All right,
Achieved.
achieved,
Okay.
achieved. They already achieved it. Okay, but let me go forward. Let me go forward just a little bit. Let me continue. It says, why does the Soviet Union need these military space capabilities? How do they intend to use them? And why does the Soviet authorities steadfastly refuse to acknowledge that they have military interests in outer space? This report will attempt to answer these questions by presenting the Soviet military space doctrine that educates and includes the ultimate Soviet objectives in outer space. At the outset, it's important to note that the Soviet Union has a dynamic and expanding, prodigious military space program. And just in case nobody knows, prodigious means very large, powerful, causing surprise. Right?
Wow. Okay.
They have a prodigious space program. Excuse me. This determination is necessary, of course, because propaganda will have the world believe that the Soviet space program is wholly peaceful in nature, dedicated only to scientific and economic pursuits. In point of fact, how true. The
Amen.
Soviet space program is not only overwhelmingly military in nature. Did you hear that? That's an established fact. It is overwhelmingly military in nature,
Yep.
but the civilian, scientific, and economic aspects of the program are entirely subordinate to the military functions. This is not to imply that the non military benefits, including those related to the Soviet prestige, it continues, hold on. Military space I'm sorry, permitted different approaches. This issue centered on what can be entrusted as space warfare function, that is, actual operations in outer space or land based to destroy the enemy. And it goes on and goes on. It talks about nuclear weapons, it talks about ASAT, It talks about the Soviet anti-satellite laser program, the active one that can knock down satellites, nuclear armaments that can blow up satellites and do aerial bursts causing EMPs.
Wow.
That's 1962.
What? What you just read is 1962 document? So they had a large nuclear space apparatus.
They copied everything we did, which is why in the Cold War we had it was this back and forth toggling and all this secrecy and everything else. They copied everything, and the public is just not educated in this fact. The Soviet Union at that time went much further than we did. Oh, by the way, right? Take the Soyuz, for example, the Soyuz capsule,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
It transports people back and forth to space. How many successful missions do you think it flew?
I don't know.
1,680.
1,000.
Can you believe that?
1,680. So
Yes.
you're saying that the Russians, since 1962, have had this enormous nuclear military space program with a shuttle system that has made 1,680 flights, shuttling personnel back and forth from, I guess, the moon and Earth, and maybe even further.
Well, how do you think our astronauts for a long time were getting up to the space station?
Well, it was the Russians. Yes,
Russia.
Yes.
Right. So they had perfected that space transport system, right? And in fact, we had to catch up to them when we started with the Apollo missions and so on and so forth. So keep in mind, these guys know about space. We still use Soviet technology.
They're ahead of us.
Yes, to get into space. So for some reason, the populace, the mindset of the populace is way behind the times, and they speak in these parameters at the White House like for some reason, Russia can't cause any threat. Have they lost their minds? Kirby did not want this information out. He is not happy about this, right? But
right.
It went over his head. He was not happy about this. It came out because the public has a right to know what they're about to be involved with.
Yeah,
that's why it came out. It didn't come out because there could be a problem.
No.
It came out because the people are going to have to deal with these consequences, and they're going to have to deal with them soon.
So the House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio, said it's time to let the cat out of the bag, because the public has got to know what's going on, because the threat is so real. I mean, from what I'm understanding, there's more damage in 2 or 3 nukes detonated in space and knocking out our entire communication systems than dropping 2 or 3 nukes on 10 major cities. You would kill more people by just knocking out our everything that it takes to run our everyday lives.
You're right. Think of this. And think of this. They had a specific type bomb with Hiroshima, right?
Yes.
What they have now is about 1,000 times greater. So you're not talking about a nuclear weapon vaporizing a state. You're talking about a nuclear weapon killing a country.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But they have bigger ones. They have ones that are called global killers.
Global killers.
Now imagine an aerial burst from a high megaton yield, right? Say like, I don't know, maybe 6,000 megatons or something like that. An aerial burst that would plunge the entire Earth in blackness. It would burn every single transformer, every single microchip, all integrated circuits. It would fuse wires, both aluminum, copper, silver plates, all that stuff would be fused. It would be no good. Not to mention, it would highly irradiate the upper atmospheres, causing the heat on Earth to increase about 32 degrees. That'd be a 32-degree heat increase.
That would be
with a radioactive mixture in the air. Everybody would be poisoned.
Yeah, people would be
right.
dying
It'd
like
be
flies.
Sickness all over the place.
Right.
It would be a long durational sickness. It would be suffering for years because you wouldn't die right away. Right. You wouldn't do that. You'd have radiation sickness for about I'd say about 4 years. Right. Before you started to pass away. Animals, vegetation would die. Then it would get extremely well, in this case, it'd get much hotter because at that point, retaliation would have taken place.
Yeah.
That's no good.
No.
And so here's the problem, though. People, they think they know Putin, but everybody should be reminded, especially those who believe in Christ. None of these leaders are Christ. Jesus is Jesus. These guys are simply people God has put over these kingdoms for his purpose. And according to the book of Revelation, he's going to give the beast time to rise. That's why nobody should, when Jesus says, when he says that nobody should have fear, don't be troubled. He's not telling us you're not going to get scared. Don't act on that fear. Don't act being troubled. Don't do that because he's doing it. Christ is, nobody can open the seals except him. He's doing it. So he's telling us, don't worry about this. This is necessary. This is what I'm going to do. It's necessary.
So these scriptures, the scriptures I read here, when Jesus says this, he said, take heed that you be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I'm Christ, and time draweth near, go ye not therefore after them. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. And he even mentions fearful sights and great signs in the heavens. So he's saying it's going to get bad, but don't be afraid, because, as you're saying, because Jesus is the one breaking the seals.
That's right. And he says these things they have to come to pass. He's doing it as part of a process. It's not out of control. It's part of a process. That's what it is. It's just like when the Assyrian was used to attack, when they attacked Israel. Can you imagine the look on their faces? But it was part of God's process, right? When they were sent into Egypt, it was part of God's process. When they were delivered out of Egypt, it was part of God's process. When they were exiled into Babylon, part of God's process. All these things are part of God's deliverance process because he promised us a victory that all of us would be delivered, right? Who held fast to his name.
Amen.
We would be delivered. And it's all part of his process. Plus, we know we have brothers and sisters out there that will not wake up. They won't yield. They won't give an inch until they see something. And unfortunately for them, well, the alarm clock is about to go off.
They're going to see something. There's no doubt.
But for everybody else, the Lord tells us, hey, stay in forward motion, stay in operation mode, continue to carry my gospel. Right.
Amen.
Don't be afraid. Don't act on your fear. Don't go bury your head in the sand. Just keep going. Operate by my instruction. You'll be okay. So these things have to happen. Can you imagine the people in World War I, World War II, the Korean Wars, right? All the Gulf Wars. They probably thought the same thing. We're still here. We're still going. Some did not make it. Right. Many heathens were destroyed in those battles. Why? Because they were war hungry. They wanted to fight. And so that's what the Lord gave them. But it's part of his process. And every single time, what do we have afterward? Peace. We had peace and prosperity. Everybody moved forward. We learned new value systems. Many breakthroughs took place after these wars. So God knows what he's doing.
Amen.
Christ is going to do what he's instructed to do. We're okay. We're going to see these things, right? A lot of people are going to get frightened, but don't act on the fear.
No, he said,
you don't have to act on the fear.
He hasn't given us the spirit of fear.
That's right.
But
don't adopt it.
But people who don't know their God, the people who know their God will do mighty exploits and teach others. Okay. Many Christians, and we're not even going to talk to the unbelievers yet for a minute, just to the Christians first. They don't know what prophecy says is coming. They haven't been taught. They don't know. And so they are absolutely paranoid and paralyzed of the events that are coming upon the earth. It is our job to inform. Mike, wouldn't you agree? It's our job to sound the alarm.
That's right. It is.
We're watchmen on the wall. We've got to warn the people of what's coming so they can prepare for battle.
That's right. That's right. It is. Because I'll tell you what is, you talk about turning spiritual. Watch what happens in Washington in the next 3 weeks, right? We're not out of February yet.
No.
They're about to have a meltdown in the White House. Just watch what happens. These guys are at each other's throats,
Yep.
big time,
Yep.
right? And if people are not careful, they're going to be drug into it at the wrong time. Because when this stuff starts to happen, hopefully nobody is operating under any delusions or any imaginative things. Because when this stuff starts to happen,
It's going to get really nasty.
There are going to be some, it will begin to escalate beyond the control of anybody. And all this nuclear, Pastor Paul, we talked on your show many years ago. And I made a statement. I said, at some point, people are going to start talking about nuclear, right?
Yep.
And I said, when that time comes, it's going to be real. It's not going to be false. It's not going to be like any other time before it. It's going to be real. And then the unthinkable will take place. The unthinkable most certainly will take place. They know Putin has launch capabilities from space. They know he put them up there, right?
Yep.
So let me give you a scenario.
Okay.
Suppose he does not launch one of those.
Okay.
But he takes one of they made it's kind of like a satellite pod, right? They're designed to re-enter into the atmosphere. If anybody hits one of those things, it's going to blow, right?
Okay.
It is nuclear, but it's full of gases, and it will spread out over the atmosphere. Now, naturally, based on the current flows, anything that enters the atmosphere over near the polar regions is coming right back over us in Canada, right?
Yes.
He already knows that. It will dissipate. Though that gas will dissipate by the time it gets over, Russia, Siberia, those places. And he already knows what will happen, so his timing is going to be right. Well, guess what? The atmospheric changes are taking place right now that would position Putin to do, the unthinkable in a time. They can't do this at any time.
Right.
You have to wait on the currents of the air
to be
streams. Favorable to the action you're taking. Right.
And
that's right.
That's based on the season of a certain time and the Earth's rotation and the tilt and where the sun is, and they know the optimal time.
That's right.
And then if he's going to do it, he'll do it during that period of time.
That's right.
So are we close to that period of time now?
Yeah, we're right there. We're about to enter into that. I believe the 25th of this month, we enter into a time when when all those high pressure systems will start to force the jet stream down a bit, and the low pressure forms. Oh, by the way, side note, they came up with a new name for a new category of hurricane. That's a side note. Anyway.
Well, wait a minute.
Because they're going to be rough.
I heard that they're going to hurricanes are going to now be category 6. They're going
to be rough. They're going to be rough. They have to look. They're going to be rough. They even have. I saw a name list, and they're making a selection of something that I kept referring to as a hypercane.
Yeah, hypercane.
Right? They're making a name for that. Yeah, because the wind speeds are going to be incredible. In fact, this could be where some of the larger hail comes from. As updrafts,
the Bible says.
As updrafts, that wind goes faster and faster. It can hold ice, aloft in the air, causing these ice balls to build, and then they have to, of course, the weight has to supersede the velocity of those winds and the sheer force holding it up, and then it drops. So you're looking at, probably coconut size hail.
Wow!
On average, coming down. I don't be surprised if you see that coconut sized hail this year. Don't be
shocked. Don't be shocked. Let me ask you this, Mike. So, what would you consider? I mean, and I haven't even asked you what China can do in the heavens, okay? But what would you consider right at this moment is the greatest threat for America? Is it a Putin nuke? Is it the southern border? Is it the jihadi?
Well, here's the problem.
Okay.
Here's the problem, right? Putin and the nuclear option, Putin's not operating by himself. He's operating and it's highly coordinated with China and the Middle East.
Okay.
He's not going to operate, more isolated. It's not isolated. They have coordinated too many things right now. China is actively trying to, probe our systems. They're always going to say, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. These governments hire universities, right, and everything else to hack, to go in and sabotage things, right?
Right.
Anybody who needs that money, they're going to pay to go do it if they can do it without getting caught. In this case, they have a conglomerate with Russia, China, North Korea, all these guys, and they are actively pursuing all systems in the U.S. I expect an infrastructure dealing with a power or water problem, a severe hack to take place within the next 2 months. I expect that.
Here
now,
in
they
America.
almost did that last month.
Here in America.
They almost succeeded last month.
Like poisoning the
They almost
water or
succeeded.
knocking out a large
Well, think of it this way.
power grid.
We have nuclear power here, right?
Yes,
so what
we do.
happens if they stop the pumps for the
they'd
nuclear
melt
power
down.
plant?
They'll melt down.
There you go. Because they know our generators at nuclear facilities are outdated.
Yeah.
And they always fail, which means those pumps are not going to work right. They don't work right when they have power. What's going to happen when they have power? And you know what they have? They have put in request after request of the priority of such, but too much bureaucracy.
Well, where's all the money going?
Well, they have the money. The money sits there.
Okay.
Because nobody can make. Everybody's fighting each other on decisions, right?
Nothing's
They
getting
will
done.
not give money to replace the generators at nuclear facilities. They're falling apart.
Is it
That's going to cause a
incompetency?
meltdown.
Is it incompetency, or is the enemy in the camp as
There
part?
you go. It's the way that the law works, right? You have to submit certain things. It has to be approved. That money is allotted, and they get it because that's a highly controlled area within the USA. Nuclear power. If they mess up, all of us are gone, right? So it is. They have a lot of eyes on that. So everything has to be procedure. Unfortunately, when you get when politics gets in between us, surviving or the continuation of infrastructure critical parts, we get a problem. That's what we have now. Now I can tell you right now, there are people in the White House on both sides, Pastor Paul, they all of them need to be tossed out.
Right.
They do not care if you die, if I die, if everybody else dies. They only want to prove themselves right. I'm just telling you now.
I know. Well, we saw that with Afghanistan.
You would be sick.
I mean, look at Afghanistan, the debacle there. They just left people. I mean, let's be honest. They left Americans as well as many of our translators that we promised that we would.
Wait till that report comes out.
Yeah, that's going to be awful.
I'm going to clue you in on something.
Okay.
Biden he was far too early in the administration to ever come up with an extraction process like that, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't come up with. He did not. He had nothing. He didn't come up with anything.
No plan.
So people are not going to like that. That report's coming out. I'm telling you right now, people are not going to like it. Because they're going to have to own up to what's been happening. We have bad actors in the White House. They should be tossed out.
Yep.
They really should. You got folks in there that are literally, I'm telling you now, they're trying to destroy America. Call it the spirit in them, whatever you want to call it, but they're doing it. And they are succeeding. They're succeeding. They're the root cause behind much of these crippling stalls that we have in the White House.
You're right.
Nothing is getting done. Nothing.
Except investigations.
And the rainbow,
all those agendas,
pushed,
right?
But everything else, no. You have folks that are obstructing, right? The very ideology that America is based on. They're stopping it. They're against it. And plus, you have foreign members in our White House that are not loyal to America.
Right.
Right.
So, and then our Congress is falling apart. Nobody can agree.
It's falling apart.
Right.
I'd say there are 6 members in Congress that are worth something. The rest, they drink too much, right?
Right.
And they do terrible things. If that ever came out, it would disgust quite a few people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they fool people more than do anything else.
Yeah. It's a sad case. So, and the doors are wide open now. The border's wide open. There's no protection. Really, we're in the most vulnerable that we've ever been.
We are.
I mean, you say that.
And you know what? As the Mexico problem, right?
Right.
Is anybody aware of what happens on the East Coast every single month?
No, tell us.
Now it's going to come out now. I'd say you get about 150,000 folks who come in on the East Coast, right?
Come in
All
on
the
the
time,
ships. Come in on the
all the
ships.
time. Pastor, they had about, I believe it was 300 people came in on 2 unchartered ships, set up shop on the beach, hanging out with
Right.
everybody, and
Right.
just walked inland. And then they found out those boats had no registration, right? No, anything.
They just people were
And they
just saying,
seized them, couldn't find a soul. Now this happens again and again and again and again and again. Now everybody's talking about Mexico. Nobody is stopping what's happening on the East Coast.
no.
You see the games they're playing,
Yeah.
and they're aware of this.
What about
They
coming down?
are
What about
aware
coming
of
down
this.
out of Canada into Detroit or into,
Same thing. There's no, except for if it weren't for Canada, right? We're probably already, compromised big time. But I think it would shock people if they saw what comes in on the East Coast.
the East
I think it
Coast.
would shock people. It
Yeah.
really would shock
Yeah.
people.
I mean, I assumed that there's a few trickling in off boats. I was not aware that they're coming in by the hundreds.
Tourists, if you saw a ship, right,
Yeah.
come in near port, all of a sudden a bunch of people come up on the beach, with towels and a bunch of junk, and they just stay there on the beach. You're going to say, well, these folks are just, they're just drying off. They're going to go home in a little. You would never suspect. They're from a different country.
Wow.
You never suspect it because they're coming in, acting like they're just, having fun on the beach.
Unbelievable. Now, so with this happening, that's a major problem, and now we've got this congressman saying, look, somebody's got to say what we got to talk about Russia's capabilities here. What about China? I mean, obviously they're in the heavens as well, and we are too. I mean, do we have any ability to defend ourselves? I mean, the space force that was created under Trump. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, going back to Air Force Command, right? Air Force Command had a very hard job. They've been getting a lot of practice. Anything that was about to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere that was dangerous, like satellites that have certain fluids in them. But if they were to touch the atmosphere, it would kill half of the world. We have satellites up there like that. They would actually take these things out, right? They have a job of redirecting those satellites and doing what they must to keep the Earth safe from satellites and to keep the satellites aloft, past that point of entry. And so all that being handed to Space Command, it is a more massive, controlled operation than ever before. Somebody anticipated that we would have, because they knew back then we had a problem with Russia when Space Command was inferred and when it was put together. We knew we had a problem. We knew that clock was ticking. We knew we had a problem. And so Space Command is active, right? Believe me, they're active. These guys are active and they are on the job. If something happened, for example, some space-based EMP, there are methods to nullify certain effects of EMPs.
Okay.
Right.
So we have some kind of countermeasure.
There are also methods. The best method is anticipation, so that the defense umbrella works out there, right?
Okay.
So yes, they will never admit or give any specifics on that because, of course, if the public knows, so does the enemy. And we can't do that. But it does not mean that we're going to outgun Russia. To be honest with you, Russia has been at this longer than we have.
Yeah.
The scientists that made the breakthroughs in America came from Germany and
Russia. Right.
Okay, so we got a problem when it comes to space. But you have a lot of people out there who believe in a certain narrative, right?
Right.
And to be honest with you, some of that narrative has run away. And our bluff, somebody's bluff is going to be called, fairly quickly. Putin is at a point. He's near a point where it's going to be a make or break situation. Now, it is troubling because he can actually reach this point in April.
In other words, with the war with Ukraine, he's going to reach a point where he's got to make a decision: continue, get more aggressive with NATO, or call it a day.
Well, if you take Ukraine, even if you take the Ukraine out, Pastor Paul, think about something.
Okay.
His main trouble was NATO.
Yes, I know. Yes.
NATO right now is doubling its forces. That's what
Yes.
NATO is doing. Okay, now what that does to Putin, it says, well, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. The reason he took the Ukraine in the first place is to stop the traffic from NATO, right? That's their doorway. If they hold that land, he's got no defense against the Western, folks here.
Right.
So he'll do anything and everything to keep them away. If they ever control that land, it's over for him.
Yeah, so
It's
he
over.
has to keep
It's over.
that.
That's do or die, and it really has nothing to do with the Ukrainian people. It's unfortunate.
It's just
that
location.
they're right in the middle of it, but they can't seem. They don't. Well, some of them have been just absolutely brainwashed, but they can't see that he does not want NATO controlling everything he does. Because, well, let's go ahead and face it. Everything NATO is a part of, it's all about control. Sharing resources,
Right.
and then somebody manages the sharing of those resources, right? He didn't want that. He didn't want that. He's going to fight that tooth and nail, right? And the people don't want that. The Russian people, they don't want that.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to make a move, because whether he likes it or not, there's been a massive military strategic move by NATO that has taken place, and he has to counter that. Right, his deadline is coming up. If he does not counter what's happening at least by April, Russia's going to be lost as far as its that corridor.
Are you concerned?
Being,
are you concerned
held.
about the Iranians and the Chinese jumping in this thing?
They are going to jump in, and they're in it. They are in it.
Okay.
Well, they found out Iran is sneaky. Iran has been gathering intel on the ships that are in the Middle East. They passed this information on to the Houthis. The Houthis then attacked those ships because they were being fed direct intel by Iran.
Yep. Okay.
Same thing with Israel. They were giving direct info to Hamas. Iran was giving intel to Hamas, and Hamas would then act on those targets, sneaking missiles, and they're doing the same thing to Hezbollah. So we have a unified effort to take down Israel indirectly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's going to change to a direct activity here.
Well, I mean, look at every day Hezbollah's firing rockets and killing Jews across the border every day, and Israel
That's
has.
right.
And then you have the buildup over on the other side of the Golan Heights between the Syrians, the Iranians, and the Russians. I mean, they're just building. And then you got, Jordan goes to the White House and basically says, this war in Hamas, this war with Hamas in Gaza has got to stop now. And then he said,
under everything.
He basically just told Biden, this is the way it's going to be. No Arabs are going to, he goes, there is going to be a two-state. He flat out just said, this is how it's going to be. There won't be any of us Arab nations agree unless Palestine gets a state. So isn't that really part of the whole deal here?
Well, yeah, that's what they should have sent him back on the first plane with one engine.
You don't trust him.
They should have sent him back on those planes where the doors are coming off or something. No, I don't trust him, no. Because he's loyal to Allah.
Yes, he is.
He's loyal to Allah. And at the end of the day, he's going to be loyal to his faith.
Right.
He didn't belong in this country. He has no say in this country. He could have made a phone call. I'm not.
I know what you're saying.
Sometimes you wouldn't let somebody in if you had precious people in your household.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't let someone who likes to burn people up in your door.
No,
you wouldn't do that. You can't let that spirit in. And I guess I'm being that way because the U.S. has this open door policy to all sorts of spirits. And unknowingly, that spirit jumps off into people because people always adopt something, right?
Right.
We have people in the White House that speak against um, people, right, and
Right.
Israel. But then when they speak and people hear it, the folks will say, "Oh, yeah, that's right." Right. So don't let them come over here.
Don't let them come and
No, you
spread
don't.
that
If
doctrine.
they cannot honor the ideology of America, then they can stay home. If I wouldn't let a soul in my house who said I hate Christ, well, you're not stepping
No, you
foot in.
can't come
You're
in
not
my
going across
house.
that threshold.
No,
It's not going
no.
to
You're
happen.
not bringing that spirit into my home. No way.
And we have to. We have become almost like a harlot because we allow anybody in the door so
Yep.
long as they pay enough.
Yep.
Right.
You're right.
And that's
They don't even have to pay
the
anymore.
downfall.
They don't even have to pay now. We'll pay them to come in.
Oh my,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
it's bad.
all right. Let me ask
It's
you
bad.
this, Mike. Tucker Carlson goes to Russia and has this interview with Putin, which I found puzzling in a way. I understand what he's doing. He wanted to interview Putin when he worked for Fox, and they wouldn't let him. So now he's saying, nobody owns me now. I'm going to do what I want to do and try to get the story. But do you think Putin was using Tucker because it was unbelievable. I watched the interview how Putin explained history. Once again, he explained that there's a monument in Kiev that's been there for almost 1,000 years that proves that, and that Peter the Great, and this is the Russian. So was he using Tucker Carlson to spread his own propaganda? Did Tucker walk into this?
That's a KGB ideology, by the way.
Okay.
Putin honors Russia, right? That's what he honors. He honors the Soviet Union. And so what you were hearing by Tucker was history of the Soviet Union. And essentially, KGB is what he grew up with, is what he's loyal to. He takes this pledge every year. So he's still loyal to those practices. And Tucker Carlson, well, he's just in his own way surviving. He may not know, but Putin is extremely smart. That guy is smart.
I know
he's
he
devoted. He's devoted to what he's doing.
He's smart.
Highly devoted. He's been doing it for a long time. And, he made a comment about Biden. He said, well, I'd rather have Biden, than Trump. He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
Because he knows that people the folks that do not like what's happening in the Ukraine, right?
Yep.
They say, well, we don't like Putin. So Putin comes out and says, well, I like Biden. Well, of course, the people that don't like him are going to say, well, I can't like who he likes, so let's go get Trump.
Yeah, right.
Putin knows exactly what he's
playing
doing.
it. He's playing it.
He knows. And so that's who Putin is.
Okay.
Putin is Putin. But like all leaders, right? I have to say this, all leaders, if they're authentic, despite what the other nations think, they will take care of their own people. And he is taking care of his own people so long as they don't try to run for president. He's taking care of it. Right?
Yeah, you won't be around long if you do that. All right, I've got a question for you here now. We have Trump and Biden, and I remember you talking to us before and saying, look, before anybody can get that second term, you got to go meet the man.
Yeah.
Do you think that this situation, I wonder sometimes if either one of these guys is going to make it to the finish line? Is there another agenda out there, a third option, or somebody else ending up with the nomination? I'm talking in both parties now because Trump's got all the legal issues and Biden's got all the cognitive issues. What's your thoughts?
Well, Pastor Paul, I'll say this. Now, this is from observation.
Okay.
It's not theories, from observation. I strongly believe that what people see is exactly what they're supposed to see. The differences they have are exactly what they're supposed to have, right? So someone is orchestrating at a very high level, because these things continuing like they are, nothing should continue this far, right? No. It's almost it's great. Even Trump's trial is crazy because you hear people saying, well, he has to raise money, right? And he has to get out there in front of people so they can know who he is. Have they lost their minds? They speak his name every single day.
Every day.
And just in case they don't understand, of course, they may not, but it's orchestrated. People are going to vote not by what the polls say. They're going to vote based on what they truly want.
Right.
And just in case nobody has noticed, when you get to know somebody in this world, you have very little interest in knowing somebody else. It's very difficult to keep the trust of a person these days. So when people find someone, it's very difficult to have them change to somebody else.
They don't
They
want
already
to.
know this.
Right.
They already know. That's right. They already know this. I think what they want is for the populace to go head to head, right?
Yeah.
If you take notice, the governments have not actually, well, they fight a little bit, but the people are destroying one another. The crime numbers are through
Off
the roof.
the charts. That's right.
The children are the casualties.
Yes.
Right. And so what they're essentially doing is getting rid of a lot of people with one blow, with everything that's happening. Massive destructive things are taking place. Families are being broken apart like you wouldn't believe. Foster children, that number's increasing. People are, it's a turnover rate of those kids who are adopted. They're sent back. They can't really fit into the families. And everything continues to degrade morally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The family.
So it's almost like
the family structure has been completely redefined. And
sure it is.
and
Sure it
everything that was
Sure it
good is called bad,
Sure it is.
and it's
Sure it
it's so destructive, and the kids are in the streets. I mean, this is the absolute assault on marriage and on the family.
Yeah. But they don't want to fix.
No,
they do
not. No, they don't.
Nobody can tell me that, because the average person, if this were to go on in an organization for the sake of the people, somebody would have said, "Okay, I yield."
Right.
That's not what they're doing.
No.
It's almost like somebody behind the scenes is saying, keep going, keep going, keep going. And it's a fact. A lot of people are getting paid. Pastor, it's so easy to make money these days. You can pay people to do anything
and they'll do it.
I am saying what I heard directly from places where you should not hear it. You can pay a person to do anything. And so it's almost, this is a controlled situation. What we see, it is a highly controlled situation.
In your line of work, and I know we can't find out what you do exactly, but in your line of work, you meet a lot of high-ranking people, and there's a lot of agendas that are being pushed, and I'm sure you see that. And like you said, you see the bribes and the payoffs and all the different things. You know what the agendas are. How have you handle that as a Christian, as a faithful patriot of this nation? Is there times you just, what do? Do you go off and pray? Do you cry? I mean, what in the world do you do? How do you handle
I pray all the time, but I'll tell you something. I pray all the time. But here's my number one thing. A long time ago, right, I learned that trust can easily be broken by people you love.
That's
right.
True.
So it happens through backstabbing. When people backstab you, it can leave a pretty deep wound.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I can go through life, wounded like that. Right. So after consultation with the Lord and a few chew outs from the Most High.
Yeah, we all get those.
I do not put my expectations in anything that can fail. So I don't put expectations in mankind.
No.
I put it all in the living God and through Christ.
Amen.
And so what happens, Pastor Paul, is I have an expectation that anybody who is not washed by the blood of the Lamb is going to be used by the enemy.
Because they can't really protect. Right? They can't really. They can't defend themselves. They're helpless without Christ.
And the truth is, they don't even know what some people, I've noticed this a lot. Some people will do things, and then if you confront them on that, a month later, they have no idea they did it.
Wow.
They're the mob after you, then a spiritual threat. And these guys fear that demons are coming to get them on a lot of occasions. That's why you see people space out from time to time with a look of raw fear in their face, and they'll snap back. Somebody will bring them back, right? So you have that going on. But I will not ever expect a person to live up to my expectations or anybody else's expectations. Because if I do that, I can't love them freely. And with a lot of people that are some people up there, Pastor, are so dark. You can be in a building. If they walk in that building, you can feel it
Mm,
everywhere.
mm.
Everything changes and the people change. It is a heaviness that's very difficult
Well,
to
is there?
explain. It
There's
is
a
a darkness.
there's a
It's a
cult. There's a cultism in some of the leadership. Wouldn't you agree? I
well,
mean,
there's a lot of cultism in the leadership, and they do they do they have things that nobody should ever have. But back to your original question, I survive because all my trust, faith, all my outlook is in Christ.
yeah,
It's that's why I never spend time trying to escape anything. I want to go through everything. If the Lord is with me, right, I need not escape anything. No,
that's right. Yeah.
I just need to
You got to
continue,
learn. We
right?
have to, as Christians,
Continue.
we have to learn that our
That's right.
faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Now,
That's
Paul
right.
said that.
And those guys, Pastor, they have nothing. They try to do everything to stay alive
Yeah.
because they have nothing. They have nothing after this life.
Yeah. But
This life to them is everything.
I would
It
be
is everything.
miserable. You talk about
Yeah, I would.
miserable
I would be too.
because
I would
our
be too.
physical bodies slowly decay. The clock is ticking on our
Yep.
length of time on Earth as a
Yep.
human being. Imagine living your whole life and knowing that when death comes, it's over. If this is it, if this is all you believe,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
obviously we believe that there's a higher power. There's the Lord
Yep.
Jesus Christ. There's a heaven waiting for us. There's a and so we're not going to put our faith in man. Which we have people that we work with, but we never ever put all our eggs in one basket of mankind. We have to keep our hand in the hand of the Lord, right?
Yeah, because you want to love people, right?
Right.
A good way to love your brother, to love your neighbor, right, is trust in the Lord. And when your brother stabs you in the back, you can say, you know what? I kind of expected you to do that. Now let's get up off the floor and keep going forward,
Amen.
right? And when you do it like that, Pastor Paul, you don't make enemies, but you find a lot of people, they get healed that way.
Amen.
By you forgiving them, they get
it's
healed when you
huge.
go forward.
That's right.
Right. Because that happens to me a lot. And I'll say, well, I kind of expected that. So don't worry about that. Let's get up and do it again. I totally forgive you. Well, how do you do that? And then you tell them how, and then you tell them, come forward. I forgive you because of Christ. Because
Amen.
he forgave me of everything. But I'll tell you
Amen.
about that, when you want to hear about it, let's go forward. And they're just,
Yeah. That's the light. Let me ask you a question. We've got this event coming, April the 8th, 2024. It's another solar eclipse. It's the second one in that 7-year period. It's going to cross America. God did it. God set it up. It's his plan.
That's right.
Is there something there? I mean, I've went back and looked historically what happens sometimes with eclipses, and sometimes there is some major events, especially earthquakes. The big ones that hit New Madrid were during the years of solar eclipses. And so here we are again. What's your thought on this one? Is it God sending a message to America or to the world, or is there something? And don't have to be catastrophe, but I'm just wondering, what's your thoughts?
This one, I can only perceive as a warning.
Okay.
A real warning.
Yeah.
Real warning. And there are always physical forces that act in very strange ways around eclipses.
Okay,
Always.
that was one of the questions.
And,
that was one of the questions that people had. Is could you ask Mike, will this eclipse affect us physically, mentally, and spiritually?
Yeah, the experts will say by way of your, anxiety or something like that. But every time we have an eclipse, there are changes in whales, for example.
Yeah.
Changes in patterns that large schools of fish swim. So these are physical changes in nature itself, and so of course it's going to have a change. Anything that affects nature is going to affect us. And normally people they normally have some sort of an attitude issue around an eclipse, right?
Okay.
For example, every time we have an eclipse, right after the eclipse, people start talking about depression.
Wow.
Every single time they talk about depression. There are certain things people do after every single celestial event, people start doing very specific things. And it happens every single time. So a person can call that coincidence. I do not. I believe that these things are appointed.
Well, full
It's
moon.
part of God's calendar.
Okay, the full moons, which God used the full moons, with all of the different the calendar. The calendar's based on full moons, right? Then you have lunar eclipses and solar. And there's no question, just a full moon affects a lot of people.
Absolutely.
In psychology,
Absolutely.
Psychologically, I mean, the tides
And
are
your
bigger.
neurons.
The tides
Your
are bigger.
neurons fire differently too.
Yeah.
Your neurons in your brain fire differently in your nervous system. They fire differently.
The tides are bigger.
Yep,
Yep. So
people with pacemakers
yep.
tend to have issues on a full moon.
Yeah.
Right.
And
because the electrical values in the body physically change.
And if some people have problems, whether they have schizophrenia or some other cognitive problem, it gets way worse for some reason.
Amplified, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a known fact that the what people know as a Schumann resonance, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
It diminishes on a full moon.
Talk about the Schumann resonance again.
It diminishes, and it is one of the frequencies of, they call it the frequency of life. Something interesting about that frequency, they took a generator that generates that frequency, right?
Okay.
They took it into the ocean, a part of the ocean. They start pumping out this frequency, and they had all these tubes around it, right? Now we're talking about seawater. All of a sudden, something began to organize. Matter organizes with the Schumann resonance. Matter
Really?
does.
Really?
They also took a bunch of people underground where they could be shielded from everything. Right? That's why they put neutrino detectors deep into the earth, so that radiation and all these other high-speed particles can't get to it. But they had people down there, and when they turned that frequency off, when they blocked that frequency, people got sick. Right. People went absolutely bonkers within, I believe they said 30 to 45 seconds. A change happened over people. They became mentally unstable and everything else.
A change in a frequency?
Because that frequency was cut off. It was cut off. See, our bodies run at 2.4 gigahertz. Oops, did I say that?
You did
but
say
it
that.
runs at 2.4 gigahertz. Well, it sounds like Wi-Fi, doesn't it?
Yeah,
anyway,
it does.
That's what your body runs by. And so anything that affects that frequency can also affect us.
But
right. It's also why they go into space and they use another frequency that everybody's familiar with. I won't say it, but they do that because in space, that gigahertz range happens to be one that can traverse all over the place.
Now
everything else is stopped.
Okay, now you know the Havana syndrome that apparently the American diplomats in Havana, Cuba, were affected by some type of frequency. Do you believe that was some type of weapon that was being used?
I do. Well, you know what? They actually came out and said it was a weapon.
Okay.
They said it was a weapon.
Is that a Russian? Yeah. Is that a Russian weapon? I mean,
I think that was a test bed for China, wasn't it? That was the Chinese. That was from China.
Do you see that going to be used more? You think that's can be used
more?
Well,
that same weapon had a signature. It was a microwave. People recorded this because they record, radio signals, things like that. So they caught the signal, and it just so happens that Chinese fighters, their aircraft, they have a similar type of wave pattern on the front of their aircraft. Microwave shields. They're the only Air Force that has microwave shielding, which means if a bird gets, say about 900 feet in front of their aircraft, right, it's going to die. Because aircraft will not hit it.
That shield,
it's going to die.
Yeah. Okay.
That microwave. It's the same microwave for those who are maybe military minded. The Patriot system radar, those octagon dishes, that creates when that radar turns on, if any bird is in front of it, they're dead, right? that bird is going to hit the ground because that it transmits just for a second. That same type of power is being utilized in front of those aircraft. So they utilize the friction of the air, right, against that aircraft to generate power. So
Wow.
not only are they using microwaves, but these guys have figured out a way to harness the friction of the air against the aircraft to harness that as power to convert that into
Some
that
type of
microwave's strength.
some kind of kinetic energy way of harnessed it.
Well,
Well,
they're using it. Yeah, and
well,
that's
so
critical.
5G is here, and more G's are coming. I guess
10G,
10G, 10G.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the has there been a devastating effect on the human race now that we have 5G everywhere? I mean, we're all in the middle of 5G. I don't care what we do now. We're all inundated with 5G. You can have a phone. You don't have to have a phone. It don't matter. It's everywhere, isn't it?
I say, I know a lot of people, they may not go with this, but 2.4 gigahertz, right?
Yeah.
You double that. If you double that, if they stay away from 2.4 gigahertz, right? We're going to be better. Now, any type of short burst radio transmission can be harmful, depending on how close you are. For 5G technology, it takes a lot more power to transmit, that shorter wavelength, because you're talking about very tight radio waves, right?
Okay.
A lot of radio waves smashed into a single space. So anytime that passes through something, of course, whatever it passes through is going to be disturbed. It's something that we've had for a long time. We've been having effects from radio, right? Because, Pastor, everything is radiation. Radio waves, that's radiation.
Radiation,
right?
Yes.
It is. And so the more you have, the more radiation you're going to have. Now, it takes a long time for it to accumulate, yes. But as we become more and more dependent upon these things, we're going to have more and more, transmitters. And that's going to be a problem. And so they're going to actually have areas where 5G, where people can avoid 5G altogether. Right now, they even have an offset signal they have to generate with 5G. Do you know that? If they don't send that signal with the 5G, that helps to diminish the effects upon the human body, everybody would be irritated. But biggest thing, have you noticed that the world is more irritated now than before we had 5G? So that's one of the effects of radio waves, is that it can cause an irritation by way of your attitude, by way of how you feel. This is a real issue. Before they turn this on, we can actually resolve problems. Nobody's resolving problems now. Everybody is so aggressive in what they want, right?
Yes.
They're either highly aggressive or they just turn their back on things. And so just imagine as it continues to grow, because we have more and more machines that need it, it's going to become very difficult to function. Maybe that's why the Bible says those who have the mark of the beast, those who are in the beast kingdom, have no rest day or night.
Right.
They don't sleep day or night.
They can't
because
rest.
they can't.
So and also they can't get back. They're damned. Okay. They're done for. Yeah. So there has to be something to that mark that is more than just.
Oh yeah.
You did wrong. There's more to it than that. It's mind controlling, isn't it? Soul controlling, I think.
Well, you know what, Pastor? If I were to give up, a lot of people are going to have decisions. They're going to have to really dig down hard in their faith and truly have a faith. Because if their faith comes down to, listen, you choose Christ or you choose the conveniences of earth, which one are you going to take? You cannot have both. A lot of people right now at this very moment, they may have a difficult time choosing Christ.
They
may. They really may.
Yes.
They're going to have to work some things out and get it right. I guess that's why this escapist attitude, like a lot of people get scared because they don't want to be harmed. Right? They don't want to feel pain. They felt pain before. God knows that. He felt more pain than all of us.
Right.
But instead of running away from that, they ought to make a determination that, Lord, I'll follow you if it costs me everything.
No matter what.
I'm going to be faithful. They've got to make that determination for real, but if they don't do that, they're going to always bring up these conditions and say, well, what if? It's not like that. Well, what if this, and that's how alternative and hybrid gospels come about. God knows we don't need any more of those.
No.
But these things are out there. And this is a good time when everything is starting to go haywire to make a determination, a commitment, because faith is a commitment. Faith is not some, just yes today, no tomorrow. Faith is a commitment,
Amen.
a lifestyle that you agree to. Nobody, it's not forced upon anybody. But if you agree to live by faith in Christ Jesus, then live by faith in Christ Jesus
Amen.
all the way as best you can. Because when you do that, that's when we're complimented spiritually, and power is given to us spiritually. A lot of people right now find themselves powerless, Pastor Paul. They don't have that authority they thought they had.
Yes.
And it's not working out for them because they did not commit to it. God knows the intent of our hearts. He knows if we're serious or not.
So,
and this time we'll need it.
One question more on this technology
Yes,
thought.
sir.
When you read the book of Revelation, you know that it talks about the mark of the beast, but it does talk about an image to the beast, and that
Mhm.
this image can speak. It can make decisions, who lives and
Yep.
who dies.
Yep.
Do you feel that I used to think that was some kind of statue, but now I'm starting to think that image could appear in my phone and every phone in the world, and then when that appears to you. I was interviewed this week by a guy on some podcast show, and he was wearing virtual reality headset.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I said, so what are you doing? I couldn't help it. I said, what are you doing? He goes, you're in my meta
You're in
world.
his space. Yeah.
Yeah, he put
Yep.
me in his meta world, and I said,
Yep.
well, how do you focus? How do you handle that? And he said, you just got to learn how to go into another reality. I guess my question is, are people going into other realities? What kind of fantasy world are we talking here?
I think what's happening is VR, virtual reality, right?
Yes, VR.
You put on the headset, and essentially, you have different. You can be in your office and make your office. You can throw a brand new big screen up on the wall, change the wallpaper, something like that. And when you turn and look at the big screen, it's still there. When you look at the wallpaper, it's still there. So you can change everything by way of a computer, and it can actually track that, and it looks real, especially with the VR they have now. But so what it is absolute adoption of something new. I wouldn't say you have to, how that guy put it. I wouldn't say that. To me, it's about adoption. It's a person adopting something given to them, right? It's kind of like a dream. When you're in a dream and you know people in your dream that you do not know in real life, but for some reason in that dream, you're familiar with them.
Right.
Sometimes people have dreams of dreams they had before, and they'll be like, "Wait a minute, I've been here before."
I know.
But when they wake up, they can't. They're like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah.
You
pick it back up where you left it off. It's a dream, and then
That's right.
And it's a month later. You go back into that same dream.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So there are memories in the dreams about people and places, and it's weird. Anyway, to put on that VR headset is an adoption or an acceptance of what's been handed to you. Now, in my little world, right, that's a primer. That gets people primed, these young kids primed to accept what's given to them wholeheartedly, right? Because when you put on that VR headset, you're seeing a brand new everything, new images. You may be in a new place.
Yeah.
To engage in VR, you have to accept. You can't reject where you are, or it's no fun. You're not going to wear it long, right? You accept it. You explore. And when you accept and explore, you find it fascinating. It's better than real life, is what kids say.
Well, I asked him,
right?
I said,
or they can escape it.
I said, where are you? And he said, I'm on Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And you're here you're here with me.
You can do that. Now, to me, right. So, but these kids, right, they have an imagination.
Right.
Like me, I don't have a good imagination. Kids do.
They
right?
do.
So I
do.
put on a VR set, and it's another dumb tool, right? I have to work with this thing.
I'd be blown away.
What kids do is they put this thing on, and they accept what they see in there, the characters, what's happening.
Yeah.
But see, here's the bad piece. Whatever, if you're watching television, you watch a movie, that movie becomes part of your reality, and it will come out in sentences, in your activities, and everything else. Essentially, our behaviors are emulated by someone. We copy what we have seen somebody else do, right? We do that. We pick up bits and pieces of everything and we make an individual. We dress ourselves that way and everything else. With VR, they accept everything, which means they can essentially accept a whole new realm, a whole new way of life, and they can escape to it through VR. Now, what happens when they hate their mom and they hate their dad and they hate their house? How can a kid do that and they have to live there? Oh, that's easy.
They can escape.
Video games, right?
Yeah.
Video games.
Yeah.
These kids, since video games have come out, kids have become more rebellious. Why? Because they can escape in the video game. VR is total immersion, right?
Yeah.
Total visual immersion, right?
Totally.
Visual and audio and audible immersion. So they can escape to a brand new world. They don't have to fool with their parents, their crummy walls, the furniture, the bed, or anything. They can go anywhere they want to. Right.
Yeah.
So they can totally accept that. And pretty soon there's going to be they have that hybrid emotion technology, which means a BCI brain to computer interface. They have figured out the language of the brain, but they can also speak to your brain through technology, right? So you can suggest to the brain that something is red. You can suggest to the brain that something tastes good, right? You can suggest to the brain that something is very good to do. You can do that.
Wow.
It's getting into behaviors. This is real.
That's what I'm saying.
Isn't it talking about?
It's going to alter people's perception, but it's going to also alter people's behaviors and attitudes or belief system. Can it change all of that?
It's going to make them make a choice. And it boils down to this. Would a child, all you have to do is look at a kid. Would they rather sit with their parents all day, right?
Yeah.
And learn stuff about life, or would they rather escape in a video game and exercise their aggression and nobody's telling them what to do? And if they get mad, they can kill everybody in the video game.
Right.
What would they choose? Right. So it essentially comes down to a choice. I think the mark of the beast is going to be a whole lot more than what people bargain for.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And they're going to essentially, can you imagine a way of life that's incomplete without technology? Right?
Yeah.
You're behind the power curve without technology. So if you have the technology, let's put it this way. If the mark is your new username and password
to a whole
how
new
many
world.
people would get it? Well, if right now with the standing technology, suppose the mark is your username and password to your bank account,
to everything,
right?
Yeah.
It authenticates your driver's license. It's on your birth certificate and everything else. And without it, you're not a citizen.
Yep.
How many people would have the mark? I guarantee you, people would start making excuses left and right. Well, God understands we have to eat. And so I didn't know it would get this bad, so let me go ahead and take it. Well, I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
If that came down to that, if I ever had to take another oath, Pastor Paul, right, and cast or deny all other sovereigns, I'm not doing it, because I will not deny Christ Jesus. No matter what. I'm not doing it. Now that I have knowledge, I didn't have knowledge at first.
Right.
I do now.
But now that you have knowledge.
Again. But people are going to be forced to take another oath. And the question is, are they going to do it? Because if they don't take the oath, they will not be a citizen. If they're not a citizen, cannot buy or sell.
You'll be a vagabond. Absolutely.
That's right.
Cut
no
off.
Driver's license, no nothing.
No nothing.
While your best friend is getting his allotted money every month.
Yeah.
Right.
You're on the street.
He's living a high life.
You're on the street.
That's right.
And unfortunately, if this was to start happening in 2 years, and unfortunately, Christian leaders would tell their congregations, many of them would, go take it. It's okay. God understands. They would. I'm going to tell you now,
right.
9 out of 10 pastors would lead the sheep to slaughter.
You're right.
I'm not going to. Look, you're not. I promise you I won't. I don't care.
Pastor Paul, that's so funny. Yeah. Because you know what? You know how right you are? Because I'll tell you something. They have already done that same thing with certain bills that have been passed in Washington, D.C.
What?
They wouldn't told their congregations, oh, it's okay. God understands this is acceptable.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
they've already done it.
They've already done it.
So they've already shown what they're going to be.
Yep.
They're changing God to suit their lifestyle so they can continue to prosper in whatever they're prospering in. My goodness. It's already happening. They're already
you're
primed
right.
for this.
You're right. This is going to separate the men from the boys. And
Yes, it will.
I mean, you got to get this in your head. Nobody wants to get to that point. We none want to see that day. But if we do, you better know what to say. You better know right where you stand. And the only way to know I ain't got a question about what I'm going to do. I already know what I'm going to do. But a lot of people don't know what they're going to do because they don't want to think about even ever having that challenge. They are, in their mind, they're gone. They're going to get away. They're going to die, or they're going to get raptured. Something's going to happen. They really don't believe that they're going to face it. Even when I just read it tonight, 4 or 5 times, that Jesus said, you're going to be tried. You're going to be tested to the point that, you'll be even, I mean, you can say what you want, but the red letters, when Jesus tells you this is going to happen and the end is not yet, for these other things have to happen, you can believe this. These things are going to happen in this book. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. What Jesus said, prophetically spoken to you in the Bible, believe me, it's going to come to pass. I don't know if I'm alive when it happens, but I already got my mind made up what I got to do. And I think every Christian's got to get there, or you're not going to make it. You'll never make it until you get there. So completely out. It's not hard. When you give your life to Christ, you're just saying, I belong to Jesus, and I'm all right with that. I'm good with that. And I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know either, Mike. Neither one of us know when that's going to take place. But I promise you it's coming to this world.
Yep. And you know what, Pastor Paul, if I got to go through it, so be it. Because
So be
you know
it.
what? Jesus is the only one. I know my own sin.
Right.
I'm not a denier of sin. And if not for Christ, he's the only one that died for me. That became a sacrifice for my dodo-ish sins, right? And through him, they're taken away? No, I will honor him if it costs me everything.
That's right.
I will, because he's the only one that ever did that for me. He's the only one that could do that for me. That way is made, nobody can take it back.
I talked to a Catholic priest who was a little boy in Romania in the Iron Curtain. Communism, Christianity was illegal. They shoot the priest in the head. The preacher would get shot. The nuns would get raped. He was a little boy, saw his grandparents murdered. And they would have church in cellars of basements. And it didn't matter if they were Protestant or Catholic. If they could just find anybody that would share the word of God with them quietly in the basement, they got together and they would pray. They knew if they were caught, they would be executed, okay? Yet they knew that they loved Jesus, they loved the Lord, and they had their faith. They put their hands in the Lord. I don't think the American church understands, because when I start telling them that you may have to have that kind of faith, they immediately say I'm wrong, and they give me 50 reasons. I already talked to people who've been there. I've already talked to people who've already done it, and they're happening in North Korea and China and the women in Iran. It's happening now. What makes Americans think that, they're immune?
It's coming.
So people need to get right with God and get their heart right with the Lord. Mike, you have worked hard all night with a bad voice, and you didn't complain, but I got to let you go. I can't keep you here all night. I appreciate. Hope you'll be feeling better in a few days.
Pastor Paul, it's an honor always. God bless you, brother.
Thank you so much, brother. The honor's mine. Thank you. Get some honey and tea. You know what to do.
I'll be good in a couple days.
Okay.
It's getting there. It's getting better.
God bless you. Thank you so much for candid conversation tonight. We really appreciate it.
All right, Pastor Paul. God bless you.
God bless.
All right.
Folks, there you go. There you go. That is the man. Mike from around the world. We don't want it. Now, we had this conversation just now because this was as frank a conversation as you're ever going to have. We none want that. I pray to God none of us, out of the 8,000 people watching right now live, I pray not one of us have to deal with that. But some of you are a lot younger than I am. I cannot promise you. I can't sit here today and promise you that we won't face the test of our lives because of our faith in Jesus Christ. I know that millions of people will one day. It may not be me. It may not be you. But you got to get this thing deep in your soul, which side you're on. You can't be You can't be a part-time Christian here. You can't play around the world and think you're going to be okay. You got to get your act together, and you got to do it now. Jesus is coming back. That I can promise. You don't want to be left behind. And when I get a song right now, I want you to check your heart for just a moment, every person. And if you need to pray, you type, if you need to be saved, you type, I want to be saved. And if you're a Christian, you just say, I need more faith. You type, I need more faith. And we'll pray right after this song. It's so important. Thank you, Jesus.